Did you hear what I said to you, Ray?
Oh, no, sorry. I stepped out to get a glass of water.
I said one of these weekends when no one's around, I'm gonna sneak into your office and steal those beautiful chairs of yours.
The purple ones?
Yes.
I'll
Oh,
immediately,
those are from Wayfair. I think they were like $149 a piece. Be my guest. I'll get new ones.
I'll immediately report on the fraud, waste, abuse hotline.
You know, you go ahead. It's cheaper than the office furniture that we have here. So my office is decorated in trash to treasure. As you'll see over here, these are all palm fronds that have fallen from my yard, and I recycled them along with our old Wall Street journals that I did paper mache and turned into fish. So we're pretty conservative here in terms of spending on this stuff.
Yeah. The first time I went into your office to visit you, Ray, I thought you were quite eccentric on your decorations there. I was quite impressed.
Oh yeah, you should see my house. But it's the economist in me that also makes me a cheapskate.
I think that's one thing you and I have in common, Ray.
Well, these chairs, they smelled like formaldehyde for probably the first 2 months that they were in here.
You pour all those savings into your shoe budget, right?
Exactly.
Oh boy.
Ray Major has the most
Hello.
fashionable shoes,
Good afternoon.
probably at Sandag, maybe in all of San Diego.
Thank you so much, Stuart. I appreciate that.
You mean when he's in office and actually wearing shoes as opposed to pajama bottoms, right?
Well, yeah, today, unfortunately, I'm fully clothed.
Cherzito,
I would say
are you
fortunately.
trying to confess something to us right now?
No,
No pajama bottoms for you?
let's not go there. Yes, but yes, like Ray, I'm fully clothed. Albeit not in the office, which is too bad. I was actually expecting us to be there in person this month, but I guess it got pushed out a month.
Yeah, I have heard the last, though it's may not be the final, it's May, but it could change.
Okay.
Well, I actually had a question about that I thought would be appropriate for the CEO update, but
Okay, well, let's wait till then. But first,
Yeah.
do we have Francesca, do we have a quorum? I don't see Raquel here for one.
Hi, Chair. We do have a quorum.
Okay. Okay, well, it is time. So, and out of respect for everybody's time and the people that are here on time, let's go ahead and get started. This is the Sandag Audit Committee, Friday, April 8th, 2022 at 12:30 p.m. I'd like to acknowledge that we have an interpreter and introduce Carlos Diaz to introduce himself and walk through how to access our interpretation services. Carlos?
Thank you, Chair. As the Chair indicated, we do have interpretation available for our Spanish speakers. We'll start with the instructions in Spanish and I'll come back with the instructions in English. Muy buenas tardes, estoy ofreciendo servicio de interpretación. Para hacer uso del mismo, solo desplácese a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen sus controles. Ahí haga clic en el icono de interpretación, parece un globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish o español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, en celular, tableta, etc., presione primero los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Por último, si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Once again, we do have interpretation being provided to and from Spanish. In the event that there are any comments in Spanish, we invite you to take advantage of the feature. To do so, all you need to do is scroll down to the bottom of the Zoom screen where your meeting controls are. There, click on the interpretation icon. It looks like a little world, and select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone, tablet, or other mobile device, you would press More, the 3 dots, then Interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on Mute Original Audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Gracias, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Carlos. I was going to, I don't know if I did anything incorrect. I was going to start out by thanking, I saw Bob got a unexpected turn at running the meeting for a little bit last time.
Yeah.
And
I'll hand that back over to you.
Oh, you're here. I didn't see you. Yeah. So
yeah,
thanks for
yeah.
that, Bob.
Sure.
Good job. I appreciate it. And I'm sorry I wasn't there, but I'm glad that you did such a fine job jumping in at the start there until Mayor Vasquez. And I just want to make sure I thanked you and Mayor Vasquez for leading the meeting in my absence. But you did a wonderful job being thrown in there without any warning whatsoever.
That's all right.
So,
Thank you.
along those lines, I'm curious if you enjoyed it so much, if you'd be willing to lead us in the pledge.
Sure. I'll lead you in the pledge. Ready?
Thank you.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America. Sorry.
And to the republic for which it stands,
For which
one
it stands,
nation,
one
under
nation,
God.
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank
I
you, Bob.
totally
Sorry about
apologize.
putting you on the
I
spot
just
there.
totally
Yes.
Bob will
apologize
forgive you
about
that moment of emotion.
Yes, I know. Well, yeah, I agree. It is definitely
Oh, my
very
goodness.
emotional times right there. So with that, we will go on and move to the approval of the minutes. Does any member of the public have comments on the minutes? I see no hands raised. Do any panelists, board members have comments on the minutes? Seeing no hand raised, I entertain a motion to approve.
Move approval.
Mayor Vasquez, do I have a second?
I second.
Bob seconds. Can we call for the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Board Member Chair Zito.
Zito, yes.
Board Member Vice Chair Vasquez.
Yes.
Thank you. Public Member Agnes Wong Nickerson.
Wong Nickerson, yes.
Public Member Stuart Halpern.
Alpern, yes.
And Public Member Bob Monson.
Monson, yes.
Thank you very much. And that item does pass unanimously.
Awesome. Thank you. We're now moving on to item number 2, which is public comments and board member comments for non-agenda items. Do we have any public comments? Seeing no hands raised, do we have any board member comments for non-agenda items? I don't
Yes,
know.
Mayor Raquel Vasquez, and I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank everyone for their patience during our last meeting as I was having some technical difficulties, but also to thank Bob for jumping in there and moving things forward while I was able to find a way to sign in and be part of the meeting. So thank you. But also, while I am speaking, I'd just like to thank everyone who's part of the effort to really take a look at what works for Sandag and to do what we can together to try and minimize risk.
Thank you, Mayor Vasquez. And I also do want to thank, I did start out the meeting by thanking both Bob and yourself, but you may not have been able to hear that, but I wanted to thank you as well, make sure for leading the meeting in my absence. I did watch most of the meeting and hence I felt comfortable voting on the minutes, but I did appreciate how the meeting came off well and it seemed productive. So thanks for everybody for doing that. Yes, Ms. Wong Nickerson.
Yes, I just want to get a update or maybe just to share with this group. Last meeting, we spent a lot of time to talk about the purchase card for some of the hospitality, reimbursement. And I know it's got covered in the media. I saw that iNewsSource has a report on that. And so I just want to know if it will come back to this committee at some point of time. I mean, it seems like based on our discussion, there are a couple of things that I know management is looking at, right? One is to set up a clearer policy, what is allowed and what is not allowed in using the P card. And then the second one is to look at the charges that happened in the past. If they are not allowable, that we will get reimbursement from employees. So I just want to get an update. Would this come back to this committee in the future meetings?
Yeah, thanks. Mary was going to give the update from what happened in her in her report on agenda item 4. So I think we'll look forward to it at that point. Thank you, Ms. Wong Nickerson. Any other board member comments or questions? Seeing none, that will then move us on to item number 3, which is the agency report, and Ray will gladly take that to us with his palm fronds in the background.
I got this one. Thank you very much, Chair Zito. Good morning, Audit Committee, or actually good afternoon. Things have been moving quickly here at Sandag, and I'm happy to provide new updates on some of our priorities. Internet connectivity has become an essential part of everyday life for San Diegans in the region, and still many senior citizens and students do not have access to high-speed internet services. And so this month, we are excited to kick off our Get Connected campaign, supporting our digital equity strategy to ensure everyone has access to high-quality internet connection. We have also officially kicked off our outreach efforts for the Youth Opportunity Pass. So starting May 1st, anybody who's 18 and under will be able to ride transit for free. And we are partnering with MTS, NCTD, and the County of San Diego to launch the pilot program. And we will use the data and the lessons that we learned to help inform our next regional plan. Chair Blakespear, Vice Chair Gloria, and Hassan traveled to Washington, D.C. last week to bring attention to the San Diego region's infrastructure needs. They highlighted our major infrastructure projects, including transit to the San Diego airport, building the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry, moving the low sand corridor off of the bluffs, and bridging the digital divide. These trips are a huge part of how we are so successful in being able to compete well and attract funding from the federal government. You may have heard that we received nearly $15 million in the latest federal bill, the second largest amount in the San Diego region. And I'm also glad to announce that Sandag was awarded $1.54 million in Caltrans Sustainability Transportation Planning grants earlier this week. These grants are going to help us implement the regional plan and turn many of our ideas into reality. In other news, I wanted to provide a quick update on the investigation of the loss of revenue that resulted from the pay points not operating on the SR 125 last summer. The team has completed its review, and in coordination with the independent performance auditor, we determined that the total loss to be approximately $1.8 million. As you know, we take our financial responsibilities seriously and have made management changes in response to what happened. We also are having an independent assessment completed to further inform our process to ensure we are taking the right steps and making the right improvements to ensure the integrity of everything that we do. And lastly, we hope you will consider joining us on Saturday, April 23rd, as we celebrate the opening of the Landis Bikeway with a ribbon cutting ceremony and community bike ride at 10 a.m. in the Park de la Cruz in San Diego. And this concludes my report. Thank you very much, Chair Zito.
Thank you, Ray. Do we have any board member, or do you have any public comments on Ray's presentation? I see nobody with their hands raised. How about any board member comments? Stuart.
Thanks, and appreciate the update, Ray. So one thing, I've actually already gotten a couple of calls and various emails about with some confusion about something I think you could probably clear up. Was there a board meeting this morning, or was there not a meeting? And the real question is, what's going on with the policy vis-a-vis hybrid access going forward?
So currently we still have hybrid, and I believe that's the case for the next 2 months. If anyone else on here can correct me if I'm wrong, I'd appreciate it. This morning, we did not have a quorum. And so the meeting was officially canceled, if you will. There was a tour that was planned to go down to Otay Mesa East. And so that was part of the meeting, but we didn't have a quorum of elected officials. The tour went on, and it included some elected officials, members of the public and staff who went down and visited the construction site at Otay Mesa East. So that's what happened this morning. We had an executive committee at 8 a.m. and that concluded. And then the regular board meeting at 9 a.m. is the one that didn't have the quorum.
The executive meeting was hybrid, correct?
Yes, that one was hybrid, and I believe the next one is too.
So is it the case that the clock ran out or has not yet run out? Or maybe if somebody can clear that, there seems to be a lot of confusion about that.
And Chair, if I may, I'm happy to address that.
Yeah, please do.
The board had previously adopted a resolution which was authorized by the governor's executive order, which permitted agencies to continue to utilize hybrid or online meetings. The board's authorization that it passed at its last meeting will expire on Monday. And since the board did not meet today to essentially reauthorize, that means that at least in the short term, our legislative bodies, which includes SANDAGs, PACs, and working groups, will be meeting in person, and we're working on ways in which we can still continue to provide the public with an opportunity to participate remotely and in person as well. So we're going to be pushing out some more information to the various committee members on what those changes may look like. You should receive something later today, I believe.
That's very helpful. So if I could just make then one other comment. In reading the board package materials related to the topic, it seemed as if the presentation was in the context of safety. But one of the things that I think many folks have talked about is the concept of, hybrid meetings for the sake of public access and social equity. And that didn't appear to be in the meeting materials, but is that something that is going to be a focus of the discussion going forward as well?
And if I may respond briefly, Chair, the limited power that we have to host remote or hybrid meetings is by virtue of the governor's executive order, and that is very specifically related to the health emergency that is in effect right now. There has been some bills that have been floated, which would essentially enact a permanent change to the Brown Act, which creates the requirements for in-person meetings. Thus far, there hasn't been a lot of movement as far as any permanent changes to the Brown Act that would allow sort of ongoing remote participation, but we're certainly keeping tabs on that and trying to follow that as closely as we can.
Amberlynn, I think his question was specific to the public, though. The Brown Act only refers to the actual governing body, and
yes,
so that have to be back in person. So are we going to enable the public to continue to participate remotely going forward?
Yes, we're looking at those options right now to make sure that we can make that happen from a technical perspective.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate the jumping in there, Chair. That was exactly the heart of my question. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Good questions too. And I think it is a salient point because it definitely provides for more access if people don't always have to be present to make comments. Okay, any other board member comments on Ray's report? Otherwise, we will move on to Mary's report, item number 4.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, or actually good afternoon, everybody. Nice to see everyone. Looking forward to seeing everyone in person in May, I'm hoping. I wanted to share a few updates on the OPA. One is sort of addressing Agnes's questions around the purchase card. So as you know, when OPA performs any audits and there's a corrective action plan that follows that audit, then we perform quarterly reviews to see that test anything that has been updated or performed around corrective actions. And if they haven't, then we also report that corrective actions that were due on that quarter or by that quarter haven't been done. So for the purchase card, we will definitely be working with management. We have already been behind the scenes working with management, even though we have, as an auditors, closed the report out. We continue to work diligently with management as they have been working hard to update their policy. They've shared a draft already with me, and I've provided a response and some comments back. I believe, and Ray can correct me if I'm wrong, that the policy is going to come to the audit committee in June or July, and then to the board in June or July, around that time. So they're working quickly to get an updated policy in place, as well as other controls that they've already implemented. But that is all part of their detailed corrective action plan that is in place and that we will follow up on a quarterly basis and report back to the audit committee and the board on their compliance with that corrective action. Ray, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that we're really trying to get the new policies to the audit committee by May so that we can get them to the board by their June meeting. And so maybe a little bit more aggressive timeline than even Mary was talking about, because we really are very serious about getting these the policies in place and making sure that we're doing things according to the way that OIPA has pointed out in the corrections memo.
And then I think Ray can add a little bit more here as well, is that the other question Agnes had was, are we looking at the transactions closer and looking to determine if any of those funds need to be returned? And I do believe, and Ray can confirm that yes, management has taken the initiative and they are looking at the transactions closer and in more detailed and a wider spectrum than the sample that we looked at, to ensure that there wasn't any misuse, and if there was, that they addressed that. Ray, did you want to add?
No,
anything?
that's what's happening. So thank you for reporting that, Mary.
Okay, so with that, we've closed out the purchase card audit and continue to work behind the scenes sort of with that matter. We have also now moved on to a new audit, which is the contracts audit. This will be the last audit that we complete this fiscal year. We had planned to perform a few other reviews due to the lack of employee resources, having one vacancy, and also having one of our senior auditors out on not just one, but another emergent situation where he's had to go back overseas. We are going to merge the two audits that we still were planning to do, which were smaller audits. We'll merge them into the contract audit. And then that will be our focus, is that contract audit, which is a pretty big undertaking for, again, the limited staff I have. Next fiscal year, we're going to be moving to a continuous auditing process. There we will be looking at ongoing projects and transactions and tasks that are occurring now, rather than looking at audits that occurred and taking a 5-year back approach. I think this is a more effective approach. I think it's more beneficial for the agency, and I think it's a better use of our resources, is really doing continuous auditing. And the continuous auditing will be focused around contracts, around purchase transactions on purchase card and other transactions, around procurement transactions. So our focus will be held there and on the current situation rather than going backwards. And I just think this will be a better use of our resources. In regards to staff vacancies, we've been advertising in numerous professional auditing organizations. We've been reaching out to other governments that work in various professional auditing organizations, control agencies such as state controllers, state auditors. Anywhere I can dig up and offer this enticing, awesome position with Sandag. And every time I've gotten a response back that we would love to come work with you, Mary, but San Diego's too expensive to live. We can't relocate. We're working 100% remote and you can't offer that to us. So given all of those challenges, I've really had to look at what this pandemic has really brought to us as our new normal, which is, unfortunately, a lot of people are now working remotely. Fortunately for auditors, this is very possible. I mean, typically auditors do a lot of independent writing up of reports, analysis, documentation work that can be done independently and remotely. So what I've done is I've allowed sort of a test of my auditors that I currently have working here, and we are allowing them to work fully remote with the understanding and condition that if they are needing to come in and actually look at original documentation, not scanned and stuff, but original support, original evidence. And if there's a reason there needs to be an in-person meeting, that they have to be aware and they have to make that concession that they understand they do have to come back into the office and work. And that there's no kind of, oh, it's 100% remote, there's no other way. They do have to have that ability to be flexible and come back in when they're needed. I just see this as being the avenue that state controllers is 100% remote now, state auditors is 100% remote. I mean, it's really hard to compete with that. And so we track our hours on a 15-minute increments. We know the task we're working on. We have budgets for every audit. So we're able to identify if there's inefficiencies around people working remotely. And then if there is, we can capture that and then quickly correct the problem. So with that, I'm considering offering a remote position to capture a really good candidate. With the understanding that they would be required at any point in time to be in the office if necessary, and that would be on their own dime, their own cost. It wouldn't be at a cost to Sandag. So that really would be like a condition of their employment, that they are able to work remotely unless there's a need for them to be in the office, and that need would be on their cost. So I'm hoping by doing this, we can capture a really great candidate, because as I've shared with you all, I would rather have no candidate unless the candidate is one that I can really benefit from their resources and their ability to really audit. Because, you know, a government auditor is a niche in governing, and you have to really truly understand the environment of government auditing. It's not something that any auditor that's worked at an external auditing firm would be able to comfortably step into. And I'm really needing that type of resource, especially because the office is so small. So with that, I'm hoping to now capture those that have shared with me that there would be interest, but they just can't relocate and such. So we'll see how that goes. Lastly, we're starting to work on our next year's audit plan. And as I said, it's going to be based on a continuous auditing, but in that, as part of the planning process, we reach out to governing board, the board members, as well as the audit committee members. And I will say that almost all of you had already reached out to me and either had risk meeting discussions or have been scheduled to do that. So thank you for that. We also have sent out invites to all the board members and invited them. Many of them have responded, and some of them I've already met with. So that process is in happening. It's very important process. It's a very important part of planning is to have a governing board and management. We've also reached out to the executive team, and they have all scheduled meetings with me to have a discussion. It's really important aspect of this because it's really taking not just an audit risk perspective, but the risk of the governing board and the risk perspective of management. So this meeting isn't just a meeting to say I had a meeting. It's a meaningful meeting, and it's one that's needed, and it's an important meeting. And it really is the responsibility of board members, of management, and of myself to have these discussions so I can really consider everything holistically when I'm planning, especially because I do have limited resources. So it's really important. These meetings are really important, and I encourage board members and everybody to reach out and have it with me. I will try to make it as quick as possible and as painless as possible, but it is so worth it. And so I'm started that process and hope to move that along. It takes a lot of time, but it's worth it. And then the last thing is we are nearing our 3 years as OPA in April. And I have to have a peer review, which is in getting ready and in the process. And that will come to you as a report, I believe in June or July. And I'm really excited about it because it's sort of like my turn to be audited. And so I welcome that challenge, and I'm excited to see if I get my hand smacked or not, or if they pat me on my back and give me a lollipop. So we'll see. I'm hoping for the best. So we've already scheduled meetings for that and the process, and I'm in the process of gathering a ton of information that I've been asked for, and crossing my T's and dotting my I's. And like I said, it's like me being audited. And so now I feel management's pain when they're saying, get me this, get me that, get me this, and I need it now. So I'm feeling the pain of that. And with that, that completes my update. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks, Mary. Good update. I guess just with respect to the questions Board Member Wong Nickerson asked, I mean, she was asking if you see that there at this point in time that there would be any reason that the purchase card audit would be coming back for discussion to this committee, or if you feel like and in particular in the light of the press comments that are being made. I think one of the comments that we see a lot of, which is unfortunately being promoted by some board members, is that there were inappropriate or incorrect purchases being made. And I don't think we've actually proven that yet. We just know that there's insufficient documentation on many purchases. And that I guess that there were some that were out of bounds of policy, but with respect to dollar amounts. But anyway, so I don't know if we're thinking that that's coming back, or we're, as you said, you're wrapping it up. So I don't think that sort of answers. We don't see a need for it to come back at this point.
I don't see a need from an audit perspective. We performed our audit. We stated what we found. You know, of course, we can never provide a guarantee that there was no fraud, there was no waste, there was no, because we didn't audit 100%, because it's not an audit. An audit doesn't look at 100% of everything. So with that, it's impossible for me as an auditor, and I wouldn't do it because I have a signature on that report that guarantees that. But from what we sampled, you know, we made our statements of what we found. We provided our recommendations in the audit, and I don't think it's necessary to open the audit for any reason at this point.
Okay, great. Along those lines though, Ray, once management is done with their more detailed review, it would be useful for when that's concluded for you to come back, or for Hassan to come back and report back on what was found, if anything, and that it is actually all officially wrapped up, if that's possible.
We will do that, Chair Zito.
Awesome, thanks. With that, I don't see any members of the public with their hands up.
I think Bob has his hand up, Chair.
I know, I'm waiting for public.
Okay.
I do public first. So just even members of the public, I don't see any. And so now we'll move on to board members. So Bob.
Thank you, Chair Zito. Mary, just a real quick question. You may have mentioned this about the peer review. First of all, I really, my hat goes off to you when it comes to these peer reviews. Having gone through several of them myself, I know how much work is involved in getting everything together and being audited as an auditor. Quick question, who is performing the audit, or who is performing the peer review?
Thanks, Bob. Actually, a very experienced, and if you're in the audit world, you'll know who he is, Charles Hester. Charles Hester has been training auditors and performing high-level peer reviews at all levels of government for probably 40 years or more. I remember, you know, when I was just starting off in auditing at the state controller's office in the early 90s, and he did a lot of training then for me, and I was in awe of him because he was just so knowledgeable at so many levels of government. So Charles Hester is very well versed, very experienced, and very well known in the audit world at all levels of government. What really impresses me about this individual is that he performs audits on the Inspector General's office and the OMB and all levels at that government at that level. He is very well versed in GAGAS, and in fact, he helped revise and edit the updates on the Yellow Book. And so I couldn't have been happier that he was able to do this review. It's a small review because we only had 3 audits to look at. So I think that's why he accepted the engagement. But if he says things are great, then I'm very comfortable that I am leaving this, if I were to go, this office in great standings. And that our manuals and our processes and our policies are well done and are following GAGAS, and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, and that's important to me.
Thank you, Mary. I'm looking forward to hearing the results.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Zito.
Thank you. Stuart. Stuart, you're muted.
Sorry about that. With regard to the risk assessment, this committee is blessed with 3 elected officials who actually have strong backgrounds related to auditing. And so I can see how sitting down one-on-one with you and isn't in any way intimidating or something that they shy away from. But that might not be the case with the full board. And I'm wondering, and maybe this is actually a question more for my colleagues who are the elected officials. What do you all think what would it take to get full board participation in this risk assessment process? Because as Mary says, this is the foundational work that she does and her office does on behalf of risk mitigation for the whole agency. And it just seems so important to try and get full participation to the extent possible. So I'm wondering if you guys have some thoughts as to what it'll take to, if there are any shy ones, to know that Mary is not there to interrogate them, et cetera. So I'll just leave that question out there.
It's a good question, Stuart. Don't see anybody else with their hands up. I guess I would start out by asking Mary, do you find, my belief was you get pretty good participation from the board to begin with. I suspect with the recent unfortunate politicization of some of the things that have been coming out, you might get even more participation as they try to push for certain areas to be looked into even more. But what is your perspective, Mary, on that, on the participation so far?
We're getting responses back, but typically it's usually the same board members that are willing to reach out and do have a comfort with me already every year. And it's typically the ones that don't respond are the ones that have never really responded. So, it varies. I agree with you, Chair. I'm hoping that given the circumstance that they now see this invite as maybe a need for them and to help them understand the importance of the OPA and that, we're here and really our role around risk and how we do prepare our plan and what we consider in that. But so far we've gotten some good responses, but I will say they are the ones that always respond. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Well, maybe I'll sync up with you afterwards. You can find out if there's a way to encourage some of the others to get more engaged.
Okay.
Good point, Stuart. Thanks. Any other ideas or thoughts on that space from others?
Yeah,
Sure.
I would just, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing this topic up, Stuart. I could share my ideas of how to get more people across the board involved. One is one-on-one engagement. Perhaps Mary could set up meetings, just an introduction or a reintroduction, and to just ask the very simple term, do you have any concerns? Or what are some of your thoughts? What are some of your thoughts about the issues at the board to establish a relationship? Another thing that I think may be of value is providing more frequent updates, information only, so that there is face time regarding the audit committee, so that will help to reinforce the comfort level of engagement with the auditing process. Those are just some of the things that I can think of. I think often it's the relationships that we have that will open the door for more communication amongst individuals. So pretty much that's all that I have to share right now. If I can think of anything else, will definitely share with you. But it would be nice to see everyone get involved. Sometimes, with a board of various leaders. Oh, that's my watch. Uh, Perhaps some may feel as though those opportunities to be expressive are far few and in between, because there are a certain few who are always very vocal. And so I just really see the value in that one-on-one engagement. And perhaps it's not just Mary, maybe it's maybe two others of the team as well. So those are my thoughts. Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling. Ed, did you try to bump in? Sorry.
I did, yeah. I just,
Thanks.
you know, I've been in organizations before where we had in-house auditors and those that came in from the federal government to audit. And it really depends on the leadership to set the tone for the auditor, that the auditor is there to really to protect the organization through critical analysis, which is not necessarily negative. It just means, look, this is what I'm seeing, my perception, and I owe you a duty to be honest. So the fact that we have a certain group of board members who are fairly consistent in responding and others that are not suggests to me that maybe it's a top-down discussion to have at the board level to ensure that everybody knows that this committee, and specifically Mary and her work, are there to help us as a group, Sandag, to be the best we can and to keep us all out of hot water. But I think it's a very important conversation to have. And I think it would go a long way to sometimes, as it was mentioned, there's a rift at the board when Mary brings issues up, it becomes politicized. It absolutely has to be depoliticized. It has to be a business situation. And I think that's important. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Good points. Actually, along those lines, maybe what we can do is, Mary, I can work with you and we can present at the upcoming board meeting just information about this, and actually how many board members, not who, but just how many have reached out and gotten involved. I find if you have scorecard type information put back, sometimes that can encourage others to participate to try to increase those results. So it's a good thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can provide that information. And just as far as reaching out, Mayor Vasquez, I love that idea. And I agree with a couple of things you said. One of the questions on the risk assessment is, in fact, do you find that it would be more beneficial for the OPA to provide you with like monthly informational updates? Just because I do feel there's a lack of face time, and then the only time I ever really do face them is when I'm having an audit, which is not always the best circumstances, right? So it's like, oh gosh, here she comes again, so I totally agree with you. I think that would benefit. And I do ask that question, and half of the board members say that would be awesome, we would love that. And the other half says they don't feel the need for that. So that's interesting. And then definitely me reaching out, trying to have a one-on-one with them. I do that as well. Some of them have been very responsive and feel very comfortable with me, while others still just, I don't know, maybe it's that fear of the auditor or something, where they just kind of stand away no matter what, just the word auditor, right? And so I think that's the struggle there is, and it's time. I think as time goes on, they'll get more used to me and more comfortable, and then that barrier will be broken.
Thanks, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, seeing no other comments, that was a very robust update and discussion. We will now move on to item number 5, the OPA fraud, waste, and abuse third quarter update report. And I'm guessing, Mary, you'll start.
Yes, thank you. So this report, until this year, sorry, we were only providing it to you once a year. And Stuart, as I can always rely on him, suggested that he give me more work, and and I always appreciate him for that. And that I provide this information on a quarterly basis. And so that's what this is. Last quarter, when I did a verbal update because I had not had any additional open cases or really any status to provide other than a verbal one. This time, and in the last, I would say 2 or 3 months, we have had a booming interest and reporting of the fraud, waste, and abuse. And so OPA received 9 additional complaints, which consist of 3 internal related issues and 6 external related issues. We have 1 that's still pending from actually 2 prior fiscal years that I just have not received the information that I requested from the individual. And until I do, I really cannot move further, as we just don't have the resources to continue to move further. They really have to provide me more evidence, and that's what I've asked for. So that's pending still. So with that, I can't go into a lot of discussion. I provided a summary of each of the matters and also the times in which it was reported, and then that the fact that they're open and pending investigation. I will share that I'm taking them based on a risk priority. So those that would pose the highest risk, I'm of course looking at. The consultant / contractor ones, those to me are larger ones because there are a lot of money that the consultants or contractors in question have been paid. And so I'm really trying to focus on those. And then also ones that I feel like I can quickly take care of with little effort, address it, find out if it's happening, and then move on. One of the allegations, or 2 of the allegations, were actually one matter that somebody had reported, and there were 2 issues. And I am happy to say, as of today, both of those issues are closed, with one being unfounded and the other one being founded. So if you look at the table 3, the status of internal fraud, waste, and abuse, if you look at table 3 of that, which is page 6 of your agenda, number 1 and 2. So 1 was an allegation that came regarding a improper revenue projection on one of the bond reports, stating that they used the wrong numbers. They apparently, the complaint was that they used 3 of the highest revenue months instead of the 12-month period of revenues, and did an average. And I confirmed through review and analysis and discussion that that in fact was not true, that was unfounded. The second part of that allegation was that during June, July, and August, 4 toll pay entries were intentionally unplugged. And as a result, there was anywhere between approximately $1.5 to $2 million in revenues that did not get reported or recorded. So a loss of revenue for Sandag as a result of those unplugged pay stations. There was a lot of work and effort done around support with management. Ray, being the economist that he is, along with other expert staff within Sandag, was able to work back and forth with the complainant and really look at the hard numbers and do a really good analysis. And it was determined, as Ray reported, that there was a loss of $1.8 million. So that has been now reported to the audit committee. It's been reported to the board of directors this morning. And there are procedures being put in place to ensure that that never happens again. And those procedures, Ray is able to answer those and give you details on those procedures if you would like. But the matter now will be closed. And so the other ones are still open and ongoing, and I'm addressing them according to priority. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them as much as I can at this point. Ray, do you want to jump in on that?
No, I just want to assure the audit committee that we did an incredibly thorough analysis in terms of loss of revenue. We looked at everything, including modeling what the potential loss in revenue would be from the fines that are imposed when people don't pay the revenue, and we collect those over the course of 3 or 4 years. And so we even looked at that type of loss. And so we looked at not just averages, but we looked at the only the potential permutations of where cars could go based upon the tolling points that were inoperable. And so and that's why it took us a little bit of time to do it, is that we wanted to make sure that we were as accurate as we could. We took a look at COVID, for instance. A lot of times what happens, people say, well, let's compare it to last year, because these things are cyclical. When school goes back in September, you get a lot more people driving on the toll road. You can see that in the data, but COVID had an effect on that. And so we had to look at these things extremely closely. We looked at all of the pay points that were working compared to the ones that weren't working, to make sure that all of our analytics and forecasts made sense. And I have a real high degree of confidence that that number, which is $1.794 million, or rounded to 1.8 million, is accurate in terms of the amount of revenue that we lost during that 3-month period.
Okay, great. I'm guessing you were done then, Mary?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for that update. I will start just with checking about public member comments or questions, and wait a second. I don't see any members of the public with their hands up, so we will start with you, Ed.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Ray. Just a couple of quick questions. Assuming there was no criminal intent with the unplugging of the pay points, is that correct?
There was no criminal intent. That the system there should have been replaced back in 2007. It's literally falling apart, and so what they're doing is cannibalizing certain points, pay points, or certain accesses when you go in, with the cameras and stuff.
Sure.
They're taking parts and trying to get other ones working. Okay, I mean, they're actually on eBay buying LED lights from China to solder back into the signs to make them work. So the guys down there are doing a remarkable job. What the problem was is that the pay points that were cannibalized were actually the ones that were counting the cars and collecting and making sure that we were collecting tolls. So with these operations, you have to actually have a beginning and an end point. And so you have to record the automobile at both points. And it was their understanding that you only needed to capture the car at one of the points in order to be able to assess a toll. But it turns out that that's not actually how it works. You have to have the license plate on where you got on the toll road, because there's a different toll assessed depending upon where you get on and where you get off. And so that's why there's so many permutations, but there was no criminal intent that I saw in terms of this. They were just trying to keep the thing up and running.
Okay, so it's like the 15 where you have segments and it gives you a breakdown. You literally says on the light board, if you get off on this off ramp, it will cost you this much. Okay, now is there a plan to, because I mean, thinking beyond that, if there's an issue with communicating to whatever server we're using, is there a plan to have a backup where they could spool the data if there's a data connection interruption between the readers and the SANDAG master, so that I realize this is only 3 months, but it's a pretty significant amount of money where that data could be captured and then reinterpreted? Well,
it is. The issue is that we need pictures of those license plates. If the part that wasn't, the cache lines were working, what wasn't working was the transponder reader line. And so people could just drive through there. So then the only way that you can find out who went through is by matching license plates. So you need the cameras to work. So it's a rather complicated system, but what we are doing now is monitoring on a daily basis to make sure that we have the appropriate traffic counts each day, because we can see this. The nuance here is that the revenue doesn't come in for probably 2 to 3 weeks until after the car has gone through. So we get the daily count right away. We don't get the revenue count until later. So really, to match it up, there's this lag time. But obviously, everybody is hyper sensitive to this. If you do go down to the toll operations center, you'll see they do have these large TV screens that are actually monitoring, and they know which pay points are up or down. They know this. The problem was the ones that were turned off, they knew they were going to be recording zeros because they knew that they cannibalized those, right? So that was what was expected. It was expected to be zero. It wasn't until the revenue came in that you could really say, like, uh-oh, something's happening with our toll collection. And that's where we weren't looking at those reports diligently enough. And now we're looking at those on a daily basis, both the revenue and the traffic ones. And just to give you an update too, in April, we're actively replacing that tolling system, and the new one should go live in April of this year, or so, well, at the end of this month, early May is when it's scheduled to go up. So when we get the new system, then hopefully these problems are completely put to bed.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up. I know Mayor Salas has been asking for consideration to have the retoll removed. Is that come before the board for any final decision, or is that still pending?
That has not come to the board for any type of consideration, although Senator Hueso is running a bill that would remove that toll from the facility. And the issue there is that we still owe approximately $180 million in bond payments because we purchased that toll road from a private company. So right now that discussion has not come up, but I see it coming up in the coming months.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for coming to the board today.
Absolutely, thank you.
And just as a real quick interim on that, Ed, a good point that you brought up is it wasn't, and this is where the improvement needs to happen around the procedures, right? It wasn't that just they got unplugged. It was that they got unplugged and they went unnoticed as far as the revenue impact of that, which means there was a procedure missing that should have been there, which is to review reports on a daily basis. And had they been doing that, it could have been captured or realized that the revenue was not being collected on an earlier basis. And I think Ray agrees with that. And I think it's that part that they are making sure now that they are doing on a daily basis.
Yes, and excuse me, and all four of those pay points did not go out at the same time. They unplugged one, were you just using that vernacular, they or cannibalized one, and then it was about a month later they cannibalized the second and third one. And so, as Mary says, had we been diligent about looking at those reports, we would have only had one unplugged, and we would have been able to look at that and say, hey, something's wrong here, this isn't making sense. But we ended up coming up with the wrong decision, which was we can go ahead and unplug number 2, 3, and 4.
Real quickly, as a follow-up, Ray, did you say that we owe that 180 million to the original operator, or did the state cover it? Now we have to pay the state back.
They're actually bonds, and so we went out and we borrowed money against the revenue stream that's coming in, and the bonds will be paid off in 2042. So until 2042, we're obligated to pay bonds that come from the toll facility.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Board Member Wong Nickerson, did your question get answered? Your hand up.
Yeah, actually, Ed asked the questions I really want to ask was, how do we have better controls in place so, in the future when something like this happens, we can figure it out sooner. So it sounds like you're already going to have a daily review of the traffic count and then the cash revenue. So that will be a good control.
Well, and that's just what we did immediately to make sure that we're collecting revenue. Directly after this meeting, I'm going into a meeting to select a consultant to come in, a toll operations consultant to come in to look at all of our procedures and processes, review our operations down there, and be able to give us suggestions on what needs to be done. This is one of those areas where, as Mary's insights are so valuable, that when she comes from the outside and says, hey, here are things you can improve. We've been doing this for a long time down there. It's time for somebody to come in from the outside and say, these are the best practices in terms of running this toll operation, both the roadside part, as well as the customer service part, as well as the technical back end part of it. And so we'll have a consultant here for probably 4 to 6 months to help us assess the health of all of those reports. Until then, all those reports are going to Andre Dujon, who's our CFO, and he's looking at those on a daily basis.
Great.
Thanks, Ray. To jump onto that for a second, so this person would be looking at more than just, tolls, that would include our managed lanes then as well. and like on the I-15 and how those tolls, those managed lane fees are collected or not?
Well,
Consultant.
the scope of this particular contract is to look at the 125 toll operations
Okay,
only. However, I think there are best practices that would come out of that. We use the same system. The
Right.
system that we're implementing at the 125 is the one that we just finished implementing on the 15. So whatever reporting we have, whatever best practices we have, we'll be able to leverage that. What we need to do also is to bring in a director of toll operations, somebody from the outside to manage that group. And then I think in conjunction with that, maybe come up with a larger contract to really look at this. The other thing here is that this is the same facility that's going to be managing the tolls from the third border crossing, or the Otay Mesa East crossing that will be open in about 2 years. And so we want to make sure that we have all of those processes in place so that it works for all 3 of the facilities that we'll be managing.
yeah, no, that's in particular, if you look at our regional plan, which is that we just adopted, which is heavily dependent on conversion of more to managed lanes. I think understanding what those best practices are and ensuring they get incorporated is important. And Mary, I don't know if this is something that's, again, useful for a presentation back to the audit committee at some future point. You know, after the 6 months this consultant's been here, I know I would be interested in seeing what the outcome of that was. And I don't know if we should bring it back here, but we can kind of sort that out, how such an update could occur and what those best practices are.
No, we can definitely do that.
We can certainly have the consultant come and present that to you, and you can ask questions directly of them.
Awesome, that'd be great. Stuart. And Stuart, you're muted again.
Thanks. You know,
Stuart, you need a little bit of improvement on your process of control about starting your speaking. Just kidding. Has to tease an auditor.
Yeah, exactly. But you can hear me now, though, I take it? Yeah?
Yes.
Great. Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. You know, Mary was overly generous in crediting me as part of the inspiration for doing this quarterly. But going back to our prior conversation, you know, part of the motivation is that when Mary brings this to us, and presumably the board will see as well on a regular basis, hopefully it will help people understand the really important watchdog role that she and her office is providing. But here's the real point. You know, by way of comparison, the city of San Diego has got a budget that's about twice the size of Sandag. And they have, I believe, 2 full-time fraud, waste, abuse investigators. And what we have is Mary in her 60th to 70th hour per week, when she has the energy, trying to do this. And so here we have an example where in just this one instance, we've seen $1.5 million to $2 million of lost revenue. There's just no question in my mind, and I suspect in all of yours, that if there were more resources to look at things more broadly, there'd be even more savings opportunities. And so what I think, you know, I understand it's going to be a process, but hopefully as the board recognizes by seeing Mary Moore, as Mayor Vasquez rightly suggested, people will start to get more comfortable about the value that she's providing, because there's a strong positive return on investment in adding to the capacity of what she's doing. This is, I think, probably just a small example of what we'd all be seeing if there were even more ability to do more things like this. So it really wasn't a question. I guess it was a little bit of a statement, but I really appreciate the work that was put into this.
Thanks, Stuart. Ray, did you want to respond? And Ray, now you're muted.
Oh, thank you. I hope I'm not out of turn, but I did want to comment on something that Stuart said, and that's that I just want to let the audit committee know that management is 100% on board with working with Mary and with the rest of OIPA on uncovering these type of process issues that we have, because at the end of the day, it makes us a better agency. It is extremely difficult for us to look at ourselves and say, this process that's been in place for 20 years is wrong, because we've been doing it for 20 years. It seems like it's what we're supposed to be doing. Yet, as you've seen time and time again, she's able to find things that make us better at what we do. And so I'm committed, as our other senior managers on our team, to make sure that these suggestions that come in from OIPA are implemented. It's difficult in many cases to hear and see some of the flaws that you have in the systems that you have in place, and you may even be proud of them, but they're truly there. What Mary's finding are real places where we can do improvements. And so, I support the efforts to support her group in any way that you can. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ray. And a point of clarity on your statement is I'm assuming you aren't proud of your flaws. You can be proud of your systems and they may have flaws.
Well, exactly.
Yes. Right. I just want to make sure it doesn't go on the record that you're saying you're proud of your flaws.
No, we're not proud of our flaws.
Okay, great. The Stewart's comment was a good lead into one of my questions, though, that I had, Mary, which is, given what you're seeing and given you're in the current process of developing the work plan for next year, are you assuming you're going to have to allocate more time in that work plan to do fraud and waste and abuse investigation, and thus potentially reduce the amount of time you'll be doing audits?
Oh, so I'm the one who does the fraud, waste, and abuse, and I just find hours to fit it in, unfortunately, right. Which means it's more than I wish I was here at Sandag. But as much as I love Sandag, it's more than I really want to give to Sandag. But what I'm hoping for, and I talked to Ray a bit about this, and he was very supportive, is, I am certified fraud examiner. I have my CFE as well as my CPA. So, and I shared this with Stuart as well. I'm going to be really honest in that they're at this time who I have on staff. I would not feel comfortable having them lead or run a fraud case without me being fully involved, because as the CFE, if I say there's fraud, there better be fraud. And so I'm not putting my license on risk for a non-CFE to say, oh, there's fraud, and when in fact there may not be. It's a risky thing, that word, right? And so I want to make sure that if it's ever found, as far as waste and abuse as well, that I'm comfortable signing my name to that. And so with that, my idea is I would like to get another senior in addition to the senior that I have vacant. I would like to hire another senior who does have their CFE as well, that would help me full-time work on the fraud, waste, and abuse cases, and allow the other two seniors and the other two auditor ones to focus on audits. So that's my next year plan. If I can get it, maybe I know we've already gotten one approval for one position, but if Ray wants to be on record in public right this moment and give me another senior position, I'm open to that discussion at this time. And if not now, maybe after we get off this call. Right?
Well, I support your position. I think you do need more help given the amount of work that needs to be done. And that requires us to talk to Andre and others when it comes to budgeting and things like that. But we did have this conversation, and I do support Mary in expanding her staffing, because you're looking at literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of documents in some cases. And a lot of this is very manual. We didn't switch to a online process for a lot of what we do until COVID actually hit. So we have boxes of receipts that we were going through last time. And so it's very labor intensive to do. And some of these cases that are coming through the fraud, waste, and abuse link that we have on our website, and just proof is in the pudding that it works, is that this toll operations, having these pay points unplugged, that came through Mary's link. That didn't come through management saying, hey, somebody within the organization claims this happened and we should look into it. There needs to be a way that people who see things that are happening within the agency, who can't get through their managers, have a way to report that. And so, you know, and Mary has a lot of those in her queue right now. I mean, I think you said you had 11 of them or something that you're looking at right now. That's a huge workload for one person. So yes, I do support you in expanding this group. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yes, thanks, Ray. And it sounds like a pretty decent amount of support, if not wholehearted, Mary. So along those lines, I mean, the other thing in me channeling my inner Stuart and trying to give a little bit more work. One thing I think that would be useful in the report would be to include, you know, I like data, I like visualizations of data, would be to include a graph that showed over time how we were doing on number of reports coming in, how many were still open, how many were closed, and how many were stuck, and just being able to visualize that over time. So we know that it becomes very obvious then if we just keep seeing that spread go, that, hey, you know, board, you either need to hire more help here or you're running an incredible amount of risk here because you have all these reports that aren't being investigated. So I think having something like that we can take to the board would be useful.
We can
visualization.
do that. You know, this is, I mean, all what you're asking for is here on this report, but I get it. A graph says a lot more to you. So we can definitely add that next time.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none. That is the only official report on the agenda. So we are wrapping up. Our next audit committee meeting has been scheduled for Friday, May 13th. That's a little scary. No scary things, Mary. Friday, May 13th. We got to make that a happy one at 12:30 p.m. And with any luck, we'll be able to be in person and see everyone face to face. We're wrapped up here. Thanks everybody for attending and your great involvement and engagement as usual. And I hope everyone has a good weekend, and we are adjourned.
Oh, before we adjourn, you know, it said right here for number 5, Office of the Independent Auditor, Fraud, Waste, and Abuse, third quarter update report, and the word recommend is next.
Oh, do we need a vote?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mayor Vasquez. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we do, because this has to go to the board of directors.
Okay. Can I take that as a motion, Mayor Vasquez?
Yes, yes, that is a motion.
To recommend to the board that takes, and do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Bob. Please, can we call for the vote, Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. Board Member Chair Zito.
Yes.
Board Member Vice Chair Vasquez.
Yes.
Public Member Agnes Wong Nickerson.
Yes.
Public Member Stuart Halpern.
Yes.
And Public Member Bob Monson.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And that does pass unanimously.
Thanks. And thanks for that catch, Mayor Vasquez. I thought this was informational. Okay. Now with that, we're adjourned, and everybody have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
See you in May.
Bye-bye.
Bye.